Oh my God. I believe we're live.
We are live.
This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across entertainment. Sorry if you saw it in the beginning. My ring light popped out on my ring light. So now I know I have no cover and it's just bright LED lights now staring at me. So I'm going to try and fix that while we're talking. But my name is Cameron Richardson. Joining me as always is Sean Clark and Evan McNelia. And guys, we had an absolutely crazy weekend. But first off, tell me how you're doing today.
Doing fantastic. Yesterday's Euro 2020 final was as thrilling as it could possibly get. It was very intense. It was awesome. It capped off what was a spectacular Euro 2020. Sad that it's gone. Now, can we please get football season back?
Got to agree with Sean here. Just waiting for football season right around the corner now that the NBA finals are shortly coming to an end over the next week and a half or so. So, excited for football to start back up, but it was definitely a jam-packed weekend and I'm excited to dive into it all.
Yeah, I don't know how it happened. The ring light thing just popped out. The cover over the lights just popped out and they won't pop back in. So yeah, lovely start to this show. But let's just get right into it. Italy, it's coming Rome. Unfortunately for the English, it did not come home after just one of the most dramatic penalty shootouts I've ever seen. We had saves, we had misses, and sadly it all began and ended with Marcus Rashford. I'm not going to put much on Jadon Sancho's and Bukayo Saka's attempts to try and save England because those were saves. I'm not going to knock down players that have their shot saved because that's just more on the goalie than it is on, the player's attempt. But Marcus Rashford has pretty much open net, had Italy's goalkeeper fooled and went wide left. Now we've seen kickers in the NFL go wide left. We know the doinks that we've seen that have broken the hearts of many Chicago Bears fans and Minnesota Vikings fans, but never, not for me at least, have I seen in a penalty shootout in soccer. I've seen shots go over the net, over the crossbar. Good old Landon Donovan, the 2009 MLS Cup final against Real Salt Lake. Heartbreaking still. But I've never seen one go off the post. It's just I've never seen a player go wide left. And that is pretty big in soccer. So you wouldn't expect players who have a point blank range could miss wide left. But we had that with Marcus Rashford. So, Sean, what were your thoughts seeing Marcus Rashford miss that one? Because it seemed like it was going in until it went off the post.
Yeah, England was in control of that penalty shootout when Marcus Rashford attempted that penalty because Pickford made a save on Andrea Belotti's penalty attempt. So England was in control. And I thought when Marcus Rashford said that, I thought, oh man, Italy is in trouble. Oh no. And here's the thing. I have to rewind the clocks back to 2019. PSG is playing Manchester United in the Champions League round of 16. Manchester United is attempting to break PSG's hearts and come back from a 3-1 deficit. What happens? Presnel Kimpembe, center back for PSG, draws a penalty. Marcus Rashford steps up for a penalty attempt against Gigi Buffon, Italian legend. Rashford buries it. Manchester United advances. So I thought Rashford's not going to miss. I even said it out loud. Yeah, Rashford's going to make this. I even said that out loud. Well, I jinxed it because what was Rashford doing? Jorginho, he was trying to do exactly what Jorginho does. Trying to do that hopping, and he was trying to just tap it in. Rashford is much better at just smashing it past the goalkeeper. Okay, that's what Rashford does. So I don't understand what Rashford was thinking. He was trying to be way too cute. And like a receiver, when he drops a pass, like we see so often in the NFL, take your eye off the ball. Or in this case, Marcus Rashford took his eyes off the goalposts in the net. So he couldn't judge where his ball was going and it went off the post. Rashford was trying to be way too cute. I think the nerves got to him. which I don't get why, considering that previous penalty for Manchester United against PSG was also pretty pressure-packed. But that's just the way it is. And that ended up being decided because Italy was able to take control back of the penalty shootout from there. And Gigi Donnarumma, who ended up winning player of the tournament, by the way, was able to make 2 huge saves.
Yeah, no, definitely there. Like at the end with Rashford's shot, like Sean said, it was just too cute. He was trying to do too much in too little time. Sean, I'm going to trust that his strengths are blasting it past goalkeepers. So, like, if that's your strength in a situation of that magnitude when you're in a championship game, I think you got to play to your strengths. And I think not playing to his strengths ultimately costed England the Euro champ.
Yeah, and we expect England to be back, but here's where I get kind of frustrated because we knew it was a possibility it would happen, and the English people after the match brought out their worries. Now there were a lot of people that showed their support and told Rashford, Saka, and Sancho to hold their heads high, but of course you see the other stuff on social media that's going to get all the rows. It's not going to be the good stuff that gets all the attention. It's going to be all the negative, and you see all the symbols, all the racial slurs get thrown around, and it only goes to show that maybe it's tough to look at because these guys know what's coming at them, and their best bet is to just stay off of social media for the next couple of days and make sure it dies down. But to be honest, as passionate and crazy as English fans are, I mean, this isn't going to go away until the World Cup begins, and then the whole thing will restart. And if England goes out, they're going to do the same thing. It's just frustrating at this point because it's kind of just expected from English fans now. We've seen it so many times. Italy's obviously not is common to it as well. I mean, they treated Mario Balotelli terribly when he played for them. But for it coming from English fans, knowing that their best players on their nation are black, it's kind of just shameful that they're still going this route after matches. It's not, a single person's fault for losing a match. Now, granted, Rashford's moment did kill their momentum in the penalty shootout, but we had 120 minutes for you to get a second goal and it never came. It's not on Rashford. It's not on Saka. It's not on Sancho. But obviously, Rashford will be the scapegoat because his did miss and it wasn't a save. So, maybe countries just aren't deserving of having, glory in their nation. We've had Mexico, their fans get banned for being absolutely terrible when they go to matches, and the English have only won 1 trophy, and that was in 1966. So, yeah, 1 trophy for a country that, gets pretty riled up after they lose or win. It's the reaction is on one side of the spectrum way too extreme, regardless of if they were to win or lose. Now, for the other losing side, well, first off, Sean, you were very excited over this England squad. Do you believe they will be back in a final next year, next fall, when we go to Qatar for the World Cup?
I expect so. The thing about this match was, simply put, they couldn't get the second goal. They scored in the second minute, which shocked everybody. No one expected England to score that early, especially Luke Shaw, of all people. Like, Luke Shaw is great, but really, I never in my life would have thought that Luke Shaw would score in a major tournament final of all players. And simply put, they weren't aggressive enough afterwards. They played defensively and they let Italy get back into it. This was Italy's tournament. Italy literally started Euro 2020 by dominating Turkey 3-0. So this was Italy's tournament from start to finish. Italy was the best team. They beat Belgium. They beat Spain, who had the best midfield. Italy beat a good Austria team. This was just Italy's tournament from start to finish, and they deserve to win this. But is England going to win the 2022 World Cup? It's a possibility. I mean, look at their squad. When they go to 2022 for Qatar, when they go to Qatar for 2022 World Cup. Jadon Sancho is going to be a year better. He's going to be implemented in Manchester United because that's who he's going to play for next season. Bukayo Saka is going to have another year under his belt at Arsenal. You're going to have, you know who really was missing this entire Euro 2020? England's probably their best player next year, and that's Phil Foden. Phil Foden just wasn't really there in Euro 2020, but Phil Foden, as we've seen from Manchester City, Cameron, is a difference maker. Imagine another year of Phil Foden with Manchester City, and he is 100% healthy for the 2022 World Cup. And you have Jadon Sancho, who's implementing for Manchester United. That's gonna elevate the attack for Manchester's, but also England in the 2022 World Cup. It's going to be incredible to see what England does. Also, you don't think Harry Kane is going to be better than he was in the Euro final? You know how many shots on target Harry Kane had against Italy? 0. England is going to be better. And I think that with Harry Maguire and John Stones gaining more confidence and Jordan Pickford continuing to get better, Jordan Pickford was amazing, by the way, this entire year of 2020 for England. He didn't allow a single goal this entire year of 2020 in open play. And he saved Jorginho's penalty, which how? I thought Jorginho was automatic from the penalty spot, as automatic as any player. So I think England will be back. Obviously, France is not going to lose in the round of 16 again in the World Cup because France is still the most talented team. But it wouldn't surprise me if England makes it back to a final. It wouldn't surprise me if we get France versus England in the World Cup final, which that would be the most hyped final there ever will be, period. And also there will be a lot of jokes about the two countries constantly fighting wars over the last 2,000 years.
Yeah, I think my biggest question, and speaking of France, is, we got to flip to World Cup qualifying and then focus on the World Cup in the quickest span I think we've seen between the Euro and the World Cup. So could that be potential fallout from a France going out early in Euro, or Germany going out earlier than expected with their, sort of comeback after, disappointing in 2018? So Sean, where do you lean there? Is France going to be fine? Is Germany going to be fine? Or there could be a little bit of, backlash and a little bit of fallout, a little bit of a doubt when they enter World Cup qualifying and leading into going to Qatar in the fall of 2022?
So I'll tell you this. France is fine. Like I said, they are the most talented team in the entire world. And I think the biggest reason that France was not very successful this year, 2020, is because they had a chemistry issue. Karim Benzema coming back did create some tension in the squad. Kim Mbappe, I think, got way too arrogant. He didn't score a single goal, and I think he is going to be humbled by this experience. But when you have a midfielder, N'Golo Kante and Paul Pogba, you're almost unbeatable right there. Switzerland just played the game of their lives. And what was, in my opinion, the best match of Euro 2020. If you didn't watch the France-Switzerland match, go watch the highlights. That match was absolutely insane. One of the best soccer matches I've ever seen. So I think that France will be fine. They still are loaded, and France is still very young, just like England is. France will be fine. Germany, on the other hand, I'm a bit more worried about. Germany still had quite a few players left from their 2014 World Cup champions squad. They're still kind of resting on the laurels of that. Thomas Muller, Mats Hummels, and many others. Now, Germany, I still think, will make it to the World Cup. I don't see them pulling in Italy 4 years ago and not make it to the World Cup, but I think they're going to struggle a bit to make it. Do you want to know the biggest problem of Germany? They don't have a true number 9. You know who their number 9 is? Timo Werner. Oh, my goodness. I mean, Chelsea did win the Champions League with that somehow. I still fail to understand that. But Germany does not have a true number 9. And until they figure that out, they're not going to be World Cup contenders. They'll probably make it. Maybe they'll make it at the group stage. They did get a loaded group when in the 2018 World Cup, to be fair, because Mexico and Sweden were really good teams. But I don't think Germany's going to make a run in a major tournament for quite a while. Maybe it'll take all the way until 2024 Euro to make another deep run because they're transitioning. They have the old guard, and the new guard hasn't fully implemented yet. When Kai Havertz is your most promising player, no offense to Kai Havertz, he's a great talent. It's a little bit of a problem. So they have a lot to figure out. They need new management, first of all. Hansi Flick is going to take over, and I want to see what Hansi Flick can do there. Joachim Low is a German legend. No questioning that. But it's time for a new era, and Germany has a lot to figure out during these World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, you cited anywhere, Evan? All right, let's move on to UFC 264, the fallout of UFC 264. I guess we can say Dustin Poirier is the winner of the trilogy after Conor McGregor unfortunately snapped his lower tibia on his left leg Saturday night at the end of the first round. Brutal injury. Now, the assumptions is that he probably fractured on one of the kicks he threw, trying to neutralize what Dustin Poirier did to him in the second fight back in January, and then take one wrong step and that thing snapped in half fully. It's a absolutely clean break. But here's what I don't like, because after the fight, Conor McGregor, instead of, just staying silent, he could still do his own thing. But no, before we got to the Joe Rogan interview, there was another clip of him pointing the gun symbol at Dustin Poirier, and then pretty much threatening death to Dustin and Jolie, saying that they need to watch themselves when they sleep. And I look at that and go, that's not the guy we had in 2015. That's not the guy that we had in 2016. Because while, yes, his trash talk was very brutal, it was all in good fun. And then he'd shake hands after, he'd show respect after the fight. But this isn't trash talk. This is actual threats being put on to people who probably don't deserve it. Now, granted, you have heated rivalries. This happens, but it should never come to a point where you're threatening violence against either, especially someone's family. That's not how you do business. That's not what competition is. That's just straight personal and straight threats. That's what it is. So the Conor we have now is a pure shell of his former self. That guy in 2015 and 2016, that guy's gone. Whatever happened on the run versus Floyd Mayweather, that somehow has just taken him fully over. That the transition between the guy we had that beat Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title in 2016 versus post McGregor after the Mayweather fight, completely two different guys. The trash talk is not there. The aura is. We don't have Conor anymore, so I don't understand where we go from here with him. He's 3-4 in his last 7 UFC fights, and I feel like the aura is dead now. But Evan, what do you think? Is the aura of Conor McGregor dead?
I think it could be resting for a little while right now, to be honest. I don't know if it's completely dead. Conor always brings energy when he has a fight, but with what happened after the fight, I think the only way you could describe Conor McGregor right now is unhinged. He's kind of off the rails right now. He's kind of lost himself a little bit within the octagon. He hasn't been able to pull out wins at a consistent rate like we saw during his prime. I think it's a real disappointment, honestly, because I was a Conor McGregor fan and I was excited for this fight and I wanted Conor McGregor to win this fight. I didn't see him as a favorite and I saw it as a tough task, but at the same time, with his actions after the fight, it's just unprofessional and shows that, I don't know, maybe he needs some more time away from the octagon. I think this rehab process could be very beneficial for him, or could be the end of his fighting career, depending on how he bounces back through it. If he has surgery, everything goes well, he gets back into fighting shape, he feels good about himself, and he's able to get right mentally back to where he was during his prime, I think he could still be a main card stay in the UFC and a co-main event fighter consistently. But I don't think that we're going to see Conor competing for championships again in the UFC. And I think his prime definitely has passed him. And I think this was kind of the door shutting on his past in the UFC, and kind of, again, how he handles this rehab process from the surgery will determine his future in fighting.
Yeah, somehow he's got some magic doctors in Ireland that in 6 weeks he's going to be back and fully healthy and training. Yeah, 6 weeks on a completely broken leg. Yeah, okay, buddy. We'll see how that goes. But Sean, where do you stand? Is the aura of the Notorious One dead?
So the thing about Conor McGregor is that he simply just is not it anymore. You know who a good comparison is right now? He is literally Odell Beckham. Think about it. Odell Beckham this past season just broke his leg, just like Conor McGregor. Also, Odell Beckham used to be the must-watch player in the NFL after his one-handed catch against the Dallas Cowboys around the time that Conor McGregor got very high up in the UFC. Also, Odell Beckham became a trash talker and just went off the rails and then became a shell of his former self. Conor McGregor is literally Odell Beckham in the UFC. Plain and simple. Conor McGregor needs some time away. Just like Odell Beckham had some time to rehab, and then he has a fresh mindset for this season. Conor McGregor needs the same thing. Get out of the ring, reflect on the terrible things you've said, and come back better. No need to insult Dustin Poirier. And Conor McGregor should not be the main event of any card going forward because he doesn't deserve it. And I truly think that Conor McGregor should not fight Dustin Poirier ever again. Why? Because I am sick and tired of seeing it, because this is turning into Warriors Cavs, a repeat of something we don't need.
Yeah, and that fourth fight was being teased heavily. Dana White brought it up. He says if whenever Conor returns, that's the fight to make. But I mean, I don't think we need this a fourth time. We know what the outcome is going to be. We've seen Dustin Conor, will go out early and try to knock him out, but Dustin will always end up gaining one. I don't understand Conor shooting for a guillotine in the first round when that's never been his game. He had us fooled for a couple seconds, but Dustin easily found his way out of it. And then Dustin landed some great ground and pound for the next 90 seconds to 2 minutes before the round ended. So I don't know what his game plan is going to be. He got his coaches making excuses now. They had an injury beforehand. And I guess I enjoy seeing his presence when it comes to being in the octagon, but the guy now is just an absolute clown. So look, I'm not rushing to get Conor back into the octagon anytime soon. And then you have guys like Darren Rovell, the betting king of the sports world, that saying that Dustin Poirier is not the guy that should be winning the UFC. It should only be the Conors and the Ronda Rouseys of the world. We have a ton of great stories that we can follow, a ton of great champions, a ton of guys that are becoming superstars. You can't just be a superstar because you talk trash and you have a certain look. But like Brandon Moreno, Charles Oliveira, they are now superstars. They're champions now. Big followings after. They were all over the place after they won their fight. So to say, oh, well, you have to look a certain way, you have to act a certain way to be a superstar, absolutely the most ridiculous thing you could ever say. It's like saying Shohei Ohtani, because he might have a language barrier, can't be in the number in Major League Baseball. That's the most ridiculous thing you could ever say, Stephen A. Smith. I don't know how we get to this point to where that's even a talking point. Shohei Ohtani is a full-blown star in Major League Baseball. He's the only guy I want to watch at the moment. Good. I love my Dodgers, but whenever I see Ohtani at the bat, I tune in to Bally Sports West out here in LA just to watch Ohtani's at bat. I would never do that for anything with the Angels, whether it be Mike Trout or anybody else. I'm not tuning in to Angels games, but now I want to tune in because of Ohtani. And that is just the effect that Ohtani has. I don't care how he talks after. I don't care if he can speak English or not. I care is that the guy rakes and the guy can pitch the lights out. That's all that matters to me. Ohtani is that guy in baseball. Him and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. are those two megastars in baseball. And I'm very excited to watch tonight's home run derby. But staying on point with the UFC, whose stock rose the most after UFC 264? Because there were a lot of finishes on the card. We had some good fights as well, but Evan, I'll start with you. Whose stock rose the most following Saturday's UFC 264?
I have three guys I wrote down for this one right here. And I just think that the co-main event and the main event both had a lot on the line going forward for them. So both of the guys that were able to get wins. For Gilbert Burns first, it's a huge bounce back fight for him after the loss to Usman, and he may get the chance to turn around and get another title shot whenever Usman and Covington gets scheduled and gets fought out in the winner of that. So he might have a one fight turnaround back to competing for the championship. So I think his stock definitely did a little yodely up, back up after that fight. And then Poirier, he's now going to get another shot at the title, which is huge for him. But the way Chris Mutino lasted 3 rounds, kicking off the main card in his UFC debut against the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley, was very impressive. He proved he has a very hard head and he can last in UFC fights. I know a lot of people were complaining about the stoppage and they thought it was premature, but come on. That guy was just getting pounded in the head over and over and over. It would have just gone on for another 30 seconds if it wouldn't have stopped. But I think Mutino really proved himself, and he got props from his opponent after the fight. So I think his stock definitely went up, and I think he'll definitely have a place in the UFC for the next few years if he can win some fights.
How about Tai Tuivasa just knocking out Greg Hardy in the first round? He was phenomenal. And then he did a Daniel Ricciardo shoey, which was pretty great to see. And he definitely has momentum. His record is now 13-3, and he definitely has a lot of confidence going into his next fight.
Yeah, and he even, got fooled because someone pulled a fast one on him and laced one of his shoeys with Dustin Poirier's hot sauce. That was disgusting because someone handed him a shoe, and as immediately as Tai Tuivasa was about to start chugging, someone put the hot sauce in and Tai spit it out. He's like, his mouth was burning and all that. So I'm like, guys, come on. We're trying to have fun here. And you try lacing someone's shoey with hot sauce. Just look, I like hot sauce, but not to that extent. I'd be pretty upset. But another guy, I think, outside of Tai Tuivasa that raises stock from the prelims, Dricus du Plessis knocking out Trevin Giles in the second round. Pretty good striker. I think middleweight division needs to be on alert, and he also seems like a pretty cool guy because after his fighting, instead of calling someone out in the interview, he actually, told us how to pronounce his name properly, and seemed to just be having fun and seemed pretty down to earth. So that's the guy you like to see in this game. We don't need 25,000 Conors in the UFC. We need those guys that are just humble and funny and can just, talk, normal, talk like a human being after their fights. And that's exactly what Plessis did. So very, very much looking forward to his next couple fights. And, hopefully he becomes a new contender in the middleweight division and can maybe make a run at the title in Israel Adesanya once he cleans out the middleweight division. All right, but let's move into the NBA. Game 3 of the finals was last night, and the Bucks got back in it in pretty dominant fashion as Milwaukee ran over Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix did not shoot well at all, and I'm still on the side of Cameron Johnson getting starting minutes. I know Jay Crowder had a good night from beyond the arc, but Cameron Johnson, again, double-digit points. He's a big difference maker. I think he can fill in for a Jay Crowder, for Mikal Bridges, because both of them are not going to have great games. If one guy's good, the other guy's going to struggle, and I feel like Cam Johnson can fill that void. He needs more minutes in these finals, especially with Dario Saric being out for the rest of the series. Someone has to step up. He's been coming up to the plate and hitting home runs every time he gets into the game. Either Mikal Bridges or Crowder are not going to be those guys. So I'm still on the side of playing Cam Johnson more than either one of those two, depending on which one struggles on that given night. But Giannis, another 40-point game. He's a full-blown superstar. And here's something interesting that was brought up. I was watching The Herd this morning, and sadly enough, it was Nick Wright hosting it of all guys. But he made an interesting point here. Because usually when a player struggles, a superstar struggles. That's the headline. Devin Booker only had 10 points. He did not shoot well at all. But that wasn't one of the two leads. The leads were the Bucks won and Giannis had a 40-point game. Devin Booker's struggles were not really mentioned all that much. They're kind of, a footnote in the game. But when it's a megastar, a LeBron type, a Kevin Durant type that struggles and doesn't shoot well at all and only shooting 20% and only scoring 10 points, that's one of the big stories. But it doesn't seem that Devin Booker struggles really take the headline. So I asked this. It's a crazy question, but is Devin Booker at this moment a superstar in the NBA? Or is he a star that's still on the brink of becoming a superstar in the NBA?
You got to remember, this is Devin Booker's first postseason ever in the NBA, and he's been in the league 5 years. I don't think that Devin Booker is considered a superstar at the current moment. I know that sounds asinine to say. I understand that. I'm probably going to get backlash from saying that. But the thing about Devin Booker, he has never been up there with LeBron, Kevin Durant, Giannis, James Harden. He's never been up there with those guys. This season, and along with the NBA, along with the Orlando bubble a year ago, was kind of like his breakout time. This past year has really been the first time that Devin Booker has really asserted himself on a national NBA level. He has made himself up there with the elite. I mean, if the Suns end up winning the championship, then I think that Devin Booker will be up there, but he hasn't won the championship yet. He's growing into a superstar, and I think a couple more years of great play from Devin Booker will put him up there if he doesn't win the championship. But if he does, then I think he will be up there. It's just right now he hasn't just yet. But a finals MVP will definitely change that.
I gotta disagree with you, man. I may be a little bit early jumping on the bus here, but I think Devin Booker is a solidified superstar. I think his play over the last year has proven that. And I mean, I think it's hard to say he's not a superstar when all he needs to do is replicate this season next year. And then I think that, all-star appearance, possibly MVP, if he continues this play how he's played throughout the playoffs in the next season. I know he struggled last night, but that hasn't been common throughout the stretch here. He's been putting up 30 points consistently in the playoffs. He knocked out LeBron James, who you say is a superstar above him. And I don't know. I do think that he is a certified superstar. And I think that the Suns can rely on him to win games. But, on nights where he only scores 10 points and doesn't shoot the ball the best, they're not going to win games. And so that's why I think that he should be considered a superstar for the Suns.
Giannis, like I said, another 40-point game for him. So going into game 4 on Wednesday, Evan, will the Bucks even the series, or do the Suns find a way to stop Giannis and steal one on the road to set up a potential title clinching game at home?
I think the Bucks get the job done at home. You saw the way the Pfizer Forum was rocking last night. They had more people outside the building than they had inside the building. I mean, Milwaukee's rocking right now. I think that energy is really going to help them. And I think it did make it difficult for the Suns on offense. So I think that Milwaukee definitely could get this game at home. I think we might see the first 6 games. I think Sean said this a couple of days ago. We could see the home team win every game up to game 7, and then whoever wins in game 7 takes the series.
I think the Bucks get it done. Giannis has been on a whole nother level this postseason, especially these last 2 games, despite his injury. It's an all-time performance in the last 2 games. There's no other way to put it. He's been sensational. And I think that Chris Middleton is going to have a huge game tonight now that the pressure is not on him as much. And I think that the Bucks will take it comfortably and it'll force a huge game 5. And the Bucks will have the momentum going into Phoenix. Game 5 will decide this series, in my opinion.
Moving on to the motorsports scene, it was only right that Speedway Motorsports Incorporated and NASCAR and any other decision makers when it comes to reconfiguring Atlanta for the future get it shoved in their face of how good this current, now old configuration of Atlanta is. The gritty pavement, the character of it. That's what makes Atlanta great. And we had a great battle between the Busch brothers and Kurt and Kyle. Kurt, once again, beating out his brother. And honestly, it was a quality race throughout. We had cars sliding and fighting the track the entire time. Now, Atlanta still needs to repave. It was coming. The track is just way too old to race on now, and you have tires wearing out in the first 2 laps. So yeah, you're not going to get the best product of all the tracks, but still entertaining enough to where it doesn't need to be turned into a mini Daytona. I was completely shocked. I thought the only announcement the track was going to make was, hey, we're repaving. But no, they're going to narrow the width in the corners and increase the banking by 4 degrees to potentially create what many assume will be pack racing and potentially a mini Daytona in an already a region that has 2 major super speedways in Talladega and Daytona. So pretty much you have a tri-region area of potential super speedways now, with Atlanta potentially joining the fold depending on how it races in 2022. So Sean, I'll start with you. Good or bad that Atlanta will be reconfigured in what is supposed to be the next super speedway in NASCAR?
This is not bad. It is terrible. I hate this. Listen, Daytona and Talladega are crown jewels in NASCAR. Why? Because there's no other tracks like it. When you see Daytona and Talladega on the calendar, you know good stuff is ahead. In a month, we're going to have the Coke 400 at Daytona. That's going to be amazing to see. And we're going to have action at those 2 races. But Atlanta Motor Speedway, we had 2 good races this year. Now, last year's Cup race at Atlanta Motor Speedway was terrible, and I fell asleep during it. But this year we had 2 quality races. We had 2 battles for the win, and it was overall a good race for both races this year. Yeah, repave it, fine to make the tire wear not as bad, but why do this? I don't understand this. We already have Daytona and Talladega. Make them special. We don't need another one. You know, you're better off making Atlanta Motor Speedway a Roval instead of whatever this garbage is. Okay, if you're Atlanta Speedway, this is what you should have done. Either repave it and make it a low downforce race, which would have been awesome, or just make it just do what you do for Charlotte Motor Speedway and make it Charlotte Roval. Okay, better than whatever garbage this is. And yes, Cameron, road courses.
You know, I'm kind of split both ways on this. I wasn't the most entertained by the race yesterday, honestly. I prefer watching those tight, close races, and I feel like bringing that Daytona field down to a 1.5 mile track could be exciting. So I don't know. I kind of like it, but at the same time, I know a lot of drivers are unhappy about it, and they're the ones that put on the show. They're the ones that lead the sport. So like, if no drivers were like talked to in like the decision-making process towards this, I'm not a big fan of it, because you should be wanting to make the people that run your sport and like put on, like I said, put on the show happy. So I don't know. I'm split both ways on this, but I think that a reconfiguration could have been good for Atlanta, but I think driver input could have made the ultimate decision on how they did the reconfiguration better.
Yeah, and I find it odd because Kurt Busch said that he was consulted about it before they made the decision. I'm like, was he the only one? Why Kurt Busch? Now, Kurt Busch is I believe the oldest veteran left. Him and Harvick are the top 2 guys, but to only go to him when he's kind of on his way out. Now, he's still going to be in the Cup Series for another 2 years, I'd expect, at the lowest, but I feel like if you're going to consult anyone, it's got to be the drivers who are, hitting their prime and going to be around the sport for another 5, 10, and so long years down the road. I wouldn't consult a guy that's, close to retiring. So it's very strange. It's a strange period because we were all excited for the next gen car. Now Atlanta comes out with this configuration, which doesn't bode well for what we're going to get in the next gen car, because it seems like we're going to stick with that high downforce at 1.5 tracks. Would just be an absolute disaster if that ends up being the case. It's what went from a lot of optimism on 2022, just it's kind of teetering right now. It's on a seesaw right now, and I guess we'll see what happens when we continue testing this car and get the full rundown on what we're going to get for what kind of package we're going to get at tracks, whether we're going to be having drivers run it, he's going to be more mechanical grip, or we're going to have aerodynamic grip, and we're going to be, gluing these cars to the ground. So I guess we'll see what happens, but we're going to close this episode talking about the best Robins in sports. And what I mean by that is, think of Michael Jordan, the greatest NBA player of all time. He is the Batman, but he couldn't do it alone. And insert Scottie Pippen. They go on and win titles. Scottie Pippen, while a great player in his own right, was not as good as Michael Jordan. He was essentially the Robin to MJ's Batman. But I'll ask, just throughout the history of sports, Sean, I'll start with you on this one. Where else do we see this? Because there are other examples out there, but who else out there are the best Robins in sports?
All right, I'm going to provide three Robins that come to mind for me. One, since I have been a Patriots fan my entire life, I have to say it. Rob Gronkowski. Okay, when Rob Gronkowski broke out in 2010 for the Patriots, he immediately became Tom Brady's favorite target. And whenever he was healthy, the Patriots were nearly unstoppable. And trust me, I lived through all that. Okay, I lived that era. It was awesome. Okay. Do you know why Tom Brady and the Patriots were able to defeat the Legion of Boom? Because Rob Gronkowski was healthy for Super Bowl 49. And who had some of the biggest catches of the game for the Patriots? Rob Gronkowski. I know Julian Edelman had the game-winning touchdown catch, but Rob Gronkowski made some of the biggest catches of the game for the Patriots. And, oh, wait a minute, Tom Brady won Super Bowl this year. Who caught 2 touchdowns in this most recent Super Bowl? Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski is Tom Brady's Robin, and they are one of the best duos of all time. The next one is for hockey, and this is before I was born, but Mark Messier for the Edmonton Oilers. Obviously, Wayne Gretzky was a cheat code. He broke the NHL. His stats are absurd. We will never see that ever again. Connor McDavid is great. He doesn't even sniff Wayne Gretzky's stats. It's absurd what Wayne Gretzky did. But Mark Messier was an elite Robin next to him, and he was able to be sensational and help the Edmonton Oilers just dominate the NHL in the late 80s. In the late 80s, there was no one better than the Edmonton Oilers, and Mark Messier was really huge with that. And now for the third one, and obviously I'm going to take the soccer route with this. Call me biased, but you had Dennis Bergkamp with Arsenal. Thierry Henry was the king of Arsenal and always will be the best player in Arsenal history. But how do you think that Arsenal was able to go 26 wins and 12 draws and 0 losses? Dennis Bergkamp scored phenomenal goals for Arsenal and was able to be that clutch gene that supplemented Thierry Henry when Arsenal had that unbeaten season back in 2004. I understand Arsenal has become the laughing stock of the Premier League. Cameron roasts me all the time for being an Arsenal fan. I get that. But Arsenal still has the only undefeated season in the modern Premier League era. That's something that Arsenal still can say over anyone else. And the biggest reason for that is because Dennis Bergkamp was the Robin to Thierry Henry's Batman. Or in a way, the prince to the king.
For what I got, I've pulled from the NFL and the NBA because that's what I know best. So going down the list here, I have 5. I'm going to go through them kind of quickly. But first off, from 2003 to 2012, the Indianapolis Colts had one of the best pass rushing duos in NFL history. On one side, you had Dwight Freeney, who during that span had 94.5 sacks. On the other side, opposite of him, you had Robert Mathis, who had 91.5 sacks, just short of him. That's one of the most solid defensive Batman and Robin combinations that's ever existed in NFL history. And they may be 2 of the most underrated pass rushers in NFL history together. But I definitely see Robert Mathis to Dwight Freeney. I see Robert Mathis as the Robin to Dwight Freeney's Batman. But that was just such an insane duo when Peyton would get them ahead in games and then the other team would just have to drop back and pass while being chased down by 2 of the best pass rushers in NFL history. And then for my second Robin, Antonio Gates with Phillip Rivers. Antonio Gates was an absolute safety blanket for Phillip Rivers while the Chargers sucked throughout most of the 2010s. You know what? Whenever we'd go 9-7, Antonio Gates would catch touchdowns in 9 of those games, get those wins. They combined for 90 touchdown connections together, 4th most by any quarterback and receiver duo in NFL history. I think Antonio Gates is one of the better Robins in NFL history. And then obviously you look at the Golden State Warriors, you have to acknowledge Klay Thompson as an absolute threat and maybe just as good as Steph Curry at times, but doesn't nearly get the recognition. Paul Gasol with the Lakers was one of my favorites as a kid growing up, in Southern California. As I first started watching the NBA, one of the first images I see is Kobe holding his NBA trophy with Gasol next to him holding his after they got their 2 in a row. So that was always one of the first ones I was able to recognize as a kid. Like, yeah, Kobe's Batman, Pau Gasol's Robin, and they're tearing apart the league. That was always fun. And then Steve Young was Jerry Rice's Robin. Jerry Rice was the Batman of that San Francisco 49ers offense in the 90s. And Steve Young just happened to be able to give him the ball exactly where he needed it so he can make plays. But those are my 5.
Now, as controversial as this is going to be, I have to say, look, Jeff Gordon's one of the great Cup Series drivers of all time. That cannot be denied. But his last championship was in 2001. We insert Jimmy Johnson into Hendrick Motorsports in 2002. He then goes on to win 7 titles. As great as Jeff Gordon was, he served as a great mentor, bringing Johnson up. But it ended up being Jimmy, taking over and winning and having all the accolades. Jeff Gordon was a great Robin. He still won races, and their rivalry was great. But in the end, Jeff Gordon was only a Robin next to how dominant Jimmy was through the 2000s and the early part of the majority of the 2010s, really, because he did win a title in 2016. As lucky as that one is, based on what happened in the closing laps of that race at Homestead. My number 2, Sean, is another Brady situation, but instead of it being a player, Bill Belichick is the Robin to Tom Brady's Batman. Bill Belichick, without Tom Brady, could not sniff a 500 record nor make the playoffs. Tom Brady, without Bill Belichick, goes and wins the Super Bowl in his first year with Bruce Arians and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, completely negating and, getting rid of the whole Tom Brady is a system quarterback. That was just one of the most remarkable seasons you'll ever get individually from a player in really any sport. No other player, I think, Chris Paul may do it with the Suns, but to go from one team as a quarterback, a system you've known so well for your entire career, and then go to a completely, new site, new location in Tampa Bay, completely different style of offense with coaching, and you go and dominate your way to the Super Bowl. That it's kind of remarkable what Tom Brady has done. And Bill Belichick, still a great coach, but obviously has not proved he can win without Tom Brady. Wasn't good in his head coaching years prior to Brady, and did not have a winning record post Brady. Yeah, that could change this year, but we'll see what happens. And I think the greatest duo that we've known in the 21st century in sports, it's Kobe Bryant and Shaq. As much heat as they had between each other, they still were able to bring. And they won 3 championships in a row. Kobe, this is before Kobe came into full-blown superstardom and took over the Lakers. Shaq was the guy. Shaq is a 30-point, 20-rebound guy. In the NBA. And Kobe, Kobe would have his performances as well, but Shaq was the guy in LA when the Lakers won those 3 titles in a row, creating one of the great dynasties in sports history. Although Sean will say that the NBA rigged it against the Sacramento Kings because the NBA needed the Lakers in the NBA Finals, negating the greatness that Kobe and Shaq brought together on the court when they were together. So that will do it for this edition of The Rich Report. We appreciate y'all for tuning in and listening. If you go subscribe to our show on YouTube, and also follow us here on Facebook and Twitter, because they will go up on those platforms as well. Make sure to check out all of our written stuff on therichport.com and follow us on social media. Those are also linked on YouTube and on Facebook. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we will see you on Wednesday. We're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. Not going to be as much sports talk. I'll tell you what that means when we have this show on Wednesday. See y'all then. Have a great rest of your day.